Sure.
So welcome back to Zombie SquadCAST, and this episode I have Crystal Day, and Crystal was I worked with Crystal on a short film that I wrote and directed, and I casted her, and we worked together. I think maybe a day or two on an ultra low budget, ultra short film that I finally pulled the trigger on. So we shot that about 2 years ago. And finally, on this quarantine, I'm finally getting around to editing it. But yeah, exactly, right. So we can discuss that a little bit because that's actually a part of the discussion as far as quarantine goes, and we can discuss. So I know for a fact you and I worked prior to that short film on a couple of those ID crime shows, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
Something in time. Yeah.
Yeah. So Crystal, if you don't mind, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and maybe what you've been doing during the quarantine.
Yeah. So as Glenn said, my name is Crystal Day, and I am an actor in the DMV area. I work on a variety of on-camera projects, mostly film-related, though some theater too. Commercials, television shows like siren shows.
Oh
Glenn
yeah.
and I have both been a part of. Also, short films, feature films, indie films, and of course, like PSAs and industrials, and sometimes the pleasure of music videos too.
Awesome.
And so when I'm not doing that, to sort of pay the bills and to make do, I'm a marketing specialist, and I do or execute different types or varieties of marketing events. So on off-premise events, and yeah, that sort of balances out to be sort of a full-time thing for me. But in light of quarantine, throughout the past month, that has taken a huge hit, and my entire schedule and kind of life as I know it has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah. So marketing. So I maybe with that kind of business, you're still able to stay relatively busy digitally, online, socially, internet wise. Is that
So there is that option. There are those within marketing, more like influencers, and those who are doing more remote booking and that sort of thing, who can probably would capitalize off of quarantine. Though what I do is more experiential marketing, so it's more like out in the field,
yeah,
interacting with consumers, actually having a positive influence from the brand and to consumers, and getting that that product more exposure to consumers.
sure.
But I do involve people, basically,
Okay.
like so. Yeah, that's kind of been that has been definitely a challenge in terms of keeping that going. So
Hmm.
yeah, as of right now, that has kind of been put on pause. I actually had just gotten a position offer right before quarantine officially started with a marketing company, just doing promotions throughout this area, and in Richmond, and that start date has been like pushed back for some time,
Sure.
actually in-person engagements. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. And this has definitely had an impact. If you could delve maybe further into how this has professionally impacted you, the quarantine and the shelter in place.
yeah. So, I'm used to working on a variety of different projects per week, traveling to gigs, traveling to shoots, traveling to different events. Like, my life tends to be pretty busy, I'm very rarely home. If I am, it's mostly to sleep. Like my roommates know, like I'm usually working. So,
Yeah.
this has definitely been very impactful on my day to day. As a result, I really haven't done work. I haven't actually worked different events or different shoots. I haven't had the ability to, though I did do a self-tape audition actually a week or two ago. So I've still been looking at scripts and still kind of been doing more solo, like self-taping, and that's been great to have that option. But in terms of, yeah, actual execution of shoots and gigs, not so much. So it's been a lot of time to sort of reflect on what I want to do going forward
Oh,
and
yeah.
just where I am currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, me and the wife, we just had a first child, and we brought the kid home March 4th or 5th, and so we've been lucky in that regard to where we have our hands full. We're occupied. We're busy. We're still stuck in the house all day, every day, and we still sometimes feel like everything's mundane and it's just the same routine and there's no change. But
Yeah.
I'm lucky to just always have sort of a brighter side type of attitude, and just take advantage of every second we have the kid. And like I mentioned before, we with the film that you and I and the rest of the crew shot 2 years ago. That's on my slate of projects to edit. During this downtime, just being stuck in the house, I'm wrapping up. I'm wrapping up two. I'm wrap. I just wrapped up one series that I shot before the quarantine. Wrapping up the second series. Going to wrap up the short film Fear This that we did 2 years ago, 2 Aprils ago. April,
Wow.
I think it was April 2018 that we shot, and uh, you know, due to so many technical difficulties, I'm sure you're aware the sound guy on that film, the sound guy dropped out a week before we shot. So that's why I wired you up, with a recorder, and I let it run throughout all the takes. I just let that one recorder run. So it's 1 hour long audio file of your dialogue for all these different takes. So I have to go back and figure out where this audio chunk goes to this take and this audio chunk goes to this take. So that's been a whole process. And yeah, so finally I'm getting I've got some opportunity to finish this up, and then after that there's a documentary that I've shot uh over the course of 3 years that
That's
I'm
awesome.
finally.
Very cool. Like that.
Yeah, so it's taking advantage of this downtime. How would you say personally you've been affected? So I think you might be the first person I've spoke to that you live with roommates.
I do.
Yeah. So how would you say personally this quarantine's taken an effect?
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, I think there's no way anyone can sort of, I guess, get out of this quarantine without being personally affected. Like it's changed so much in terms of the friend about this yesterday, and that's a big thing that I've kind of encountered. And I've always had like very close friendships and just like meaningful dialogue with friends. But I think that's sort of become perpetuated with this quarantine, and I've actually noticed I've fostered very deep connections over the past like couple of weeks after all this has started. And you're quarantined with roommates, and you're living with each other, and what they're doing, what they're about, and you're surrounded with them at all times and all hours. But I found that like we have a really good dynamic, and things, we're able to cohabit really in a very positive way. So I'm lucky. And one of my roommates is actually one of my best friends too. And we both dance together, and every Tuesday, just kind of establish some sense of scheduling. We do our dance like choreography rehearsals together, and so that, and kind of as much as possible. Um, and yeah, I think in terms of other personal, like interpersonal relationships, I've become a lot closer with some people. And in a way, Glenn, it's actually made things a lot clearer. Like quarantine has actually shifted my thinking in terms of who are the people that really are a big part of my life, and who matter and who care and are concerned, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lucky to. Well, I've mentioned numerous times on this show before that we're still blessed that we have the technology we have today. I can only imagine, how people would have handled this in the 80s or 90s, even early 2000s. But we set aside the Netflix, the Hulu, the YouTube, the things that can keep us occupied and entertained and keep our minds off of it. Digital, ebooks and Kindles and things of that nature. We have Google Hangouts, we have Skype, we have Zoom, we have FaceTime, Facebook, all these different apps and digital services and technologies to keep us in touch and keep us connected with those that we care about. And it, years ago it might have been, a select few, but still we can stay in touch with just about everybody we stayed in touch with a year ago, weeks ago, months ago, essentially to the same level, because there were criticisms. A previous guest of mine on here, we discussed that, there's always these criticisms that we have our noses, stuck to our phones. And now that is the way that we're staying connected and
Yeah.
staying ground. We're actually staying grounded through that technology. What used to disassociate us from society previously is now keeping society implanted. And also, it's important for us to remember to go out. We can still go outside and go for a jog and go for a walk as long as we keep our social distancing. But we realize now that from a distance, we're having person-to-person conversations with neighbors that we never did before, with strangers on the street that want to take a look at the kid from a distance, my kid from a distance, and share the details about the kid, and they'll share their details about maybe their grandkids and their kids' kids and things of that nature. So yeah, I think this is going to kind of reshape our society, but I always think for a better, because at least America, if not the whole world, has always adapted and overcome and evolved for better, I think. And yeah, before we had 9/11, I mean, I don't want to get too political and stuff like that, but before we had 9/11, and from 9/11 we had the Patriot Act, and there might have been a number of criticisms with that, but unbeknownst to us, this nation might be safer because of the Patriot Act. So there's always criticisms, and then there's always the benefit. There's always the pros, there's always the cons. And with something like this, there's always a number of cons, but there might be a bunch of pros. There might be a bunch of future pros. There could be a bunch of future cons. We might reevaluate how we, interact and get involved with each other. But yeah, that's great. So you have your dance thing. If go into more detail, there was a little bit of an internet hiccup there. If you want to go into more detail with your dance, your online dance thing.
Sure. So yeah, I actually am part of a dance team in town here, where my roommate and she's actually the I guess the team sort of like captain, and so she comes up with a choreography, and basically we have about 6 weeks typically. Of course, that's been extended now because of quarantine. But we were actually towards the end of learning a routine, and it involves different steps. It incorporates different bachata moves, which is a Latin style of dance, and also
Okay.
zouk, which is a Brazilian dance form. And so we compiled both moves from those dance forms, and then basically, performed that. And so we've just been practicing and rehearsing every Tuesday to try and fine tune and keep everything as polished as possible while this is going on, so that when quarantine is finally lifted, we can perform and make that happen. So.
Yeah. So and like I said before, working on these projects now, so that once the floodgates open, you go out and you and your team are just ready to like kick ass at the dance competition. In my case, editing these things now so that I have some sort of a product, some sort of a brand now that I've built here. under different circumstances. Maybe I found a hack. You found a hack to still pull off your dance team,
Yeah.
and then you can kick it into overdrive once we're out the doors. I can pitch my projects to producers to do it in a much bigger budgeted way. Actual film crew, actors, crew members on set, explosions, maybe who knows what the production might entail. But yeah, once those floodgates open, we're out there and we're actually taking these projects to the next level, because we have so much time to find a hack, to find a quarantine hack, a work from home type of hack.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So also, have you mentioned still doing video submissions? Are you
Yeah.
doing voiceover work or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Glenn. Yeah, I've actually, I would love to do more voiceover. It's always been something I've found a lot of interest in. But it's mostly projects for feature films.
Mm.
There's one actually filming, hopefully, God willing, this coming like late June, July, in the Northern Virginia, DC area, and actually is friends with one of my good friends who I've worked with in the industry, and he's written, yeah, I guess a feature. And I spoke with him about this sort of just at the beginning of quarantine, and nothing is finalized yet, but just auditioning for that, and it was great to be able to just like sink my teeth into some sides and
Yeah.
sort of yeah, just sort of delve into it and develop a character. Of course, going through the whole process of self-taping, um, memorizing dialogue, filming and editing, like all of that, which I've kind of done for a long time, probably for half of my acting career. But yeah, it is great to be able to do that. And so I've still actually been getting emails from agents and other production companies about projects, and there's a chance that social distancing wise, there's a shoot happening next weekend that might be shot outside, just everyone at a distance, because there's an independent film that I was a part of that we were supposed to wrap on quite a while ago, and my director actually texted me a couple of days ago and was like, yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but we were hoping to finally get the last day of principal photography wrapped. Are you comfortable filming, actually, yeah, going out and taking care of that? So that might be something that happens next weekend.
Yeah. And you raise another good technical point of how just to take a long lens, using a longer lens on cameras and just having someone further out. The crew is just further distance, and we might not be lav micing people anymore. The clip-on mic, we might be booming people again from a distance. Maybe a more I forget the name of it, but it's a specific boom mic that's just much sharper, much more expensive, and these long lenses are more expensive. But if you put the budget into that and you find other workarounds and other hacks on this production, and just have the actors just going to have to stand further away, maybe how back in the day they would slate with the clapper, with the slate, scene one, take one, etc. And there's a bunch of different ways to kind of figure that out on how to do that with still people on set, on location. But yeah, your trailer is now going to be your car. You might be responsible for bringing your own drinks, your own makeup, your own crafty. Maybe the person can Venmo you an additional stipend for having to bring your own food, your own lunch. Throw an extra $10 because you had to bring granola bars and your own
Right.
Red Bulls or whatever, bottled water, whatever it is. And those are some little extra changes to the production. So it'll be easier on a producer and a PA. PA doesn't have to go out and get coffees and Red Bulls. The actor's gonna have to bring their own stuff, throw them a few extra bucks instead of production going out and buying that. So
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a different take on how to pull off an all on set, on location shoot. My last gig as an actor on set was, I think, March 11th, was with a story house. Well, I don't think it was Story House or Sirens, but it was a crime show. I think it was the new one, Wide Net.
Why not? Yes.
And you know Jason Nunez, he's on every other
I,
uh, Hispanic guy, beard, kind of long hair. He's like the first AD on every other crime show in the
okay.
area. He was always with Sirens. When Sirens left, he jumped with I think Story House and Wide Net and all the other shows being shot in the area. Um, but yeah, he was on there. Everybody, this was around the time when people were still doing the elbow bumps,
Yep.
and they had, you know, all these cleaning supplies to make sure everything's clean. And that was the last acting gig I was on. But yeah, they found a way to just shoot everything in the same room because they cleaned this one room, and so they did all the interrogation scenes just in this one room. And the camera, the camera and the crew were kind of far away. They picked a bigger table so the actors were a bit further away from each other. And their crafty was in things that could be wiped down with a Clorox wipe. It was all cans of sodas, granola bars wrapped, Rice Krispie treats wrapped, so you could just wipe everything. It wasn't like you remember on some shoots you could reach in and grab a beef jerky,
Yeah.
or it was a box of Joe. Everybody was touching the box of Joe. This case, it was, canned things, plastic bottle things that you can wipe down your individual bottle of water and things of that nature. But at this point, we were also shooting at it was a restaurant with a room downstairs. They were still serving food. We all still got food from the kitchen, but you could tell the waitress, the servers had, rubber gloves and gowns, and maybe it wasn't masks at the time, but
Right.
it was rubber gloves, and they were practicing their sanitary issues. So yeah,
Wow.
that's definitely, looking at different ways of still going outside and socializing, but again, 6 to 9 feet. Of course, I'm a bit of a psycho when it comes to um, always multiplying everything by 1.5. So they say 6 feet. I'm gonna do 9. My wife had a C-section with the kids, so they were telling her 6 weeks recovery. I said no, 9. I'm gonna take care of all the stuff around the house, and of course she is breastfeeding, or she's pumping, or she's making bottles and she's feeding the kid.
Right.
But other than that, like, who's gonna do the laundry? I'm gonna do the laundry. Well, I can start doing stuff now. No, I know they said 6 weeks. I'm going to multiply by 1.5. It's going to be 9 weeks. They say 6 feet social distancing. We should probably just do 9, because you can't be, yes, you can be too safe. It is possible to be just too safe. That's going to make you nuts. But it's a weird math that I always do in my head, like as a producer, rounding up, as a producer, as a crew member, rounding up money needed to produce a show, rounding up days and hours of the day to produce a scene, to produce a shot, things of that nature. So
Sure.
that's always been the case for me.
That makes sense.
um yeah,
Might as well be prepared for all situations, because
absolutely.
no.
Better safe than sorry. And you have some critics out here like, oh, masks are stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I think most counties are requiring masks now. Now you'll get a fine or something. I don't really know what the case is, but I always have the mask. I always have the glove. It's better safe than sorry. Yeah, maybe the mask isn't necessary, but it wouldn't hurt to take the extra time just to wear it, just in case. Yeah. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I think we're in that for sure. Yeah.
So
Great.
I guess we'll move on to my next point, which would be: is there a film or a series, or maybe a book, or a series of films or series of books that you've been reading, you've been watching, you've been binge watching during this shut-in that definitely stand out? I mean, they just entertained you, or they inspired you, or they just helped you get through a rough day, or what have you.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I think now more than ever, like having content, original content, and just content on streaming platforms, Hulu, Netflix,
Mhm.
YouTube. that stuff is crucial right now. I think that, like you were saying before, and to kind of hark back to that point about how those sorts of, I guess, that kind of content as a whole is really keeping us sane in a time where we're not sure what's happening next, and
Hmm.
really don't know what the future holds or what, is going to happen 2 weeks from now, or maybe even, a couple of days from now. And I will say that is something that has definitely kind of kept me grounded, because I know, okay, I'm going to clean today and I'm going to listen to this podcast. It's going to help me. I'm learning X, Y, and Z. I'm staying
Hmm.
abreast of something that doesn't involve what's going on regarding, COVID, Corona, because it's so easy to just sort of become immersed and engulfed in what we're going through right now, and to take a step back and to sort of engage the other side of our brain creatively. And, in that regard is so crucial. And I'd say in terms of what I've been watching, um, it's kind of been, there's actually two series that I've been watching. One is actually called High Fidelity, and
Yeah.
it's a series adaptation um, of the film that came out back in, I think it was the early 2000s with John Cusack.
Yeah. So yeah, this is I'm sorry, this is Hulu, right? High Fidelity's
This
on.
is Hulu, yes.
Yeah. So I saw advertisements. So yeah, it's a series. Yeah, it's like a series reboot on Hulu of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, it's actually what they did was really, really cool. It's kind of transformative in terms of the protagonist, which is Rob, female character. And they have her basically, she's a record store owner as well, similar to John Cusack's character, but it kind of highlights a lot of her relationships
Hmm.
and what she's sort of experienced in a series of flashbacks, and also interactions with her employees who happen to be some of her best friends, and also interactions with those who've been her biggest heartbreaks. And it's done in a really kind of witty, but also has a little bit of a indie sort of hipster vibe to it as well. It takes place in New York City, so I kind of liked. It's kind of like a very 21st century sort of take
Hmm.
on, like relationships, music, life, and how that all sort of threads together. So that's been one of the series that I actually binged. I watched the entire first season because there's only one.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it really makes you think, because she's not a perfect character. She's got a lot of flaws. She's definitely, I'd say she can almost be antagonistic in terms of how she conducts herself. But at the end of the day, it's sort of a realization about what really matters, and just being there for the people that you care about.
Okay. High Fidelity. I'm gonna have to check that out. I have Hulu, so and yeah, I saw the advertisements for it, added it to my watch list, but so much stuff, like there's one or two things that me and the wife have to watch, and then there's the things that I don't binge watch. That there's things that I binge watch alone. There's things that I keep up with. I still watch wrestling. I'm 40 years old. I still watch pro wrestling. I'm a fan of the AEW brand, not the WWE brand. AEW is the competitor of WWE, and they're on TNT, and just seeing that they're still competing,
Right.
uh, but they I guess they gutted their headquarters and they built the ring in there, and they have a small set of seating, and they have other wrestlers
Right.
as the audience, and so they cut their wrestling roster in half. I guess I assume they're testing them before every Wednesday taping, and it's live. So I guess they're tested the day before and the day of, and they have some of the big names that still wrestle every once in a while. Then they'll throw out, but usually AEW they would have maybe 10 matches, and now I think it's cut down to 5, and those that aren't wrestling are kind of like the spectators now. And they found a unique way to work around an empty stadium and still keep the brand going, still keep the wrestling happening, still keep the soap opera storylines and the characters going and building and things of that nature. And so
That's really great that they're still able to find a way to make do considering what's happening, you know?
yeah, and I only assume WWE is still doing the same thing, but I just fell off of WWE. I know it as WWF. I just kind of fell off with that. Um, I'm not sure how much into wrestling you are or were, but back in my days, it was WCW, NWO versus WWF, and I was always on the WCW side. And now that AEW is blowing up, it's kind of like the new WCW. It's AEW, All Elite Wrestling. So, I've been, there's shows like that new episodes are weekly,
Yeah.
and then you have shows like High Fidelity, where I assume Hulu dropped the whole series out at once.
Yes.
But there's another show that Hulu has called Little Fires Everywhere that me and the wife are watching.
Yeah, I
But
actually seen the previews for that.
they drop but it shows like that or Handmaid's Tale that they drop new episodes weekly. It's not the whole thing. And so Hulu kind of does 50-50, where they might do a release like Netflix does. Netflix drops everything at once, and you can binge watch it or take your time. Hulu might drop everything at once for you to binge watch, or they just drop new episodes weekly, and it's hard to figure that out sometimes. And that's, I guess, my one beef with Hulu is I don't know which one is. I'm like, where's the next episode? Oh, that's the weekly release one, or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, Little Fires Everywhere. I'm watching pro wrestling. I watch every once in a while. Um, there's a whole slew of things that me and wife are watching together. There's stuff that me and her watch separately, and
Yeah, I was gonna ask you just because I'm gonna cut you off, but I was curious if you've because I'm sure you've seen the previews. It actually was released, I think. I want to say maybe it was sometime last year, but have you, being a filmmaker, being an actor yourself, I don't know if you've seen or watched Barry.
Barry, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Love Barry. I think it's hysterical, and not that I'm a hitman or an assassin or like a private mercenary, but I think it's funny. You mentioned that because my acting career started. I've been doing crew for 15 years, but my acting career started after I enlisted in the DC Army National Guard as kind of like a side job, like a side hustle. I was still doing full-time freelance crew work, but then someone said, Sirens, Storyhouse, they always want detectives, they always want military, they always want cops and things of that nature. And in the National Guard, I'm an MP, military police. So I just took that. I took that and made that as basically as my acting school. And I thought it was funny that in Barry, he's kind of taking his demons. He's taking his experiences as like, an assassin and a hitman and putting that into his roles, into his acting craft. Yeah. Yeah. I thought Barry was hilarious. And I think they came out with a second season already, but I don't think I've seen the second season.
No, I've not either, actually.
Okay.
And truth be told, I actually haven't finished the first yet. I'm about 4 episodes in. So, speaking of, I watched it a little bit last night. But yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned using kind of your own backgrounds
Mm-hmm.
with the National Guard, and I guess using that going forward with potential roles, and like I guess parallels to Barry. He's using his demons. He's using, I guess, just that struggle that he has, that inner war within him, doing
Mm-hmm.
something that he's always done that he does not like doing, but he feels obligated for Fuchs, for himself, for sometimes just survival purposes, to take care of. But he's launched into this entirely new world that makes him access a side of himself that he really never even considered before, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it serves as an artistic outlet and an emotional outlet that he's not allowed to show to his handler or to his clients as an assassin. He's able to go to this acting class and just let loose. and dump all his demons out on the table for people to maybe be entertained by or to be moved by.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say that exactly. Like, you know, his coach tells him, "Where are you? Like, what space are you in?" And he kind of has that episode where he's supposed to be in a grocery store, you know, going
Right.
down the aisle.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "What are you looking for?" And he's like, "Soup." And he's like, "What does that look like? What are you?" And, you know, he's having to sort of get into his own head. And I think there's such a, I think for Barry especially, there's sort of this disassociation, like disassociating from what he did with who he was. It was a part of him, but he never really thought about how anything really would impact him. And now he has to think about it all the time, you know, creating space in terms of his own needs and his own wants.
Mm-hmm.
And that also comes to form in the term, like in terms of relationships, in terms of connecting with people in an emotional way, actually bridging that gap between what he's doing cognitively and cognizantly, and then also how that affects him emotionally, and really becoming aware of those two things. And I think, yeah, I think he didn't realize how much he needed that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it was almost like therapy to him without getting caught, you know,
Right.
as far as, you know, his illegal activities. It was almost like, you know, therapy to him. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an awesome show. It's unique character interactions, and definitely, definitely, you know, profound on a lot of levels. Um, well, I guess, you know, that'll move me to my next point, which would be what is your next agenda or next set of goals or plans, or just one goal, one plan, but generally your next agenda for, say, the next 2 months. Say we're still quarantined.
You know, that's a really good question. I remember like reading your points, and that was what I was thinking about, because I think so many people, I think we're kind of split or polarized. I think there's one camp that's like, I'm just trying to make it through tomorrow, and I don't even know what tomorrow holds, and all I can do is control today. And then there's the other side of the coin where it's like, I need to have a long-term plan. I want to know what I'm doing throughout the next couple of months, because that'll help me, I guess, sort of just stay grounded. I can control something.
Yeah.
And I found myself sort of being in the middle between those two camps. I find that uh, I've sort of taken on a lot of like my own projects, like personal projects, in terms of something that's small, maybe things that I put off for so long. You know, cleaning up my car, for instance, like as actors, like traveling around, like I'm guilty
Oh
of
yeah.
just letting things build up,
Yeah.
not, you know, I'm sure you know, like, yeah, I'll throw this wardrobe in here. I'll, like, you know, this item will just be on my back seat for 2 months, whatever. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're actually having to look and stare that down and say, okay, I have no excuse now.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to take this day to clean and vacuum out my car. And so that was something I like kind of delved into, I guess, maybe a week or two into quarantine. But in terms of long term, I've started thinking like, what do I see for myself in the next couple of weeks? And the biggest thing I think quarantine has, like, in COVID as a whole, has really taught me is just trying to be the best version of myself, you know, whether that's mentally by staying mentally active in terms of like reading. And I've tried to get back into that and really like sink my teeth into some great literature. Like I was just talking with a friend about some like F. Scott Fitzgerald short stories. One is called Winter Dreams, kind of like a Great Gatsby um, influenced story.
Mm-hmm.
And just trying to keep those juices flowing, especially as actors and creatives. Like it's kind of imperative.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's been one thing, and getting away from the screen and really doing something in that way has helped me feel engaged and feel like, everything is still moving along. I can escape it. But then also staying physically active too is important. And I'm a very physically active person in my day-to-day life normally. So, whether that be working out, dancing. So I've been telling myself I'm going to take a walk every day for the next couple of months, a nighttime walk, and talk with friends who I haven't spoken with in a while, and make it a point to catch up with them and figure out what they're up to, what they're doing, what their goals are, whether it be the next week, the next month, the next 2 months. And also stay on some sort of fitness schedule, and like just, make sure to, even if it's just turning on like Spotify and like dancing around, like, as intensely as possible for like 10-15 minutes, and then doing some like, like body resistance strength training, just doing that. So that way I'm, just being the best version of myself physically. Um, and then making sure I'm out in nature too. So a lot of hiking and a lot of walking outside, and that sort of thing has been really helpful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point. It's tricky to keep that day by day mentality versus that long term mentality, and it's tricky to keep a balance between that. But you know, to keep in mind that the working out every day, the dancing, strength training, however the fitness regimen is daily, will not only get you through the day by day, but it's also maintaining what it is you want long term. Because I've been slacking on the fitness, I got to admit, with it, between the kid and working on some of the side projects and trying to also fit in maybe a 2 mile run. I aim for anywhere between 2 to 3 mile run around my big cul-de-sac residence. And I'll wake up and realize I haven't worked out in 4 days, and but I have to remember to do that, because in 6 months from now, I don't want to be extremely overweight. I want to be slim. I want to be trim. I want to be jacked for whatever role might come up. I still have to maintain physical fitness standards for the National Guard. I still have to stay in shape if I'm going to be doing crew work and lifting up lights or lifting up speakers or lifting up cameras or whatever the case may be. And again, also, like I said, with the passion projects that I'm editing, I have a schedule. I have a long-term schedule to finish projects for releasing something afterward, to then building a better opportunity and a bigger project once the floodgates open. But day by day, there's a schedule of editing the audio for episode 1, then editing the video episode 1, and editing the audio for episode 2. And every day is this finely tuned schedule. Day by day gets me through the day. Editing, fitness, baby bottles and diapers with the kid, watching a show with the wife, go to sleep, do it again, do it again, do it again. But the next thing you know, me and the wife, I remember in March, she was saying, when is this ever going to end? And that was March. And the next thing you know, it's April 14th. And realizing throughout the day that, I start a podcast and then hang out with her, then start a podcast, then hang out with her and the kid, and then watch something with her and the kid, then have dinner, then edit an episode. And the next thing I know, it's 10 o'clock, time to go to bed. And the days are going by because you're staying active day by day with a long-term goal. And it's just systematic and just sticking with the schedule. The next thing you know, it's April. Next thing you know, it's May. Next thing you know, it's August. And then you're going to be back on set with better acting tools in the toolbox, with better self-reflection, with a more positive mindset, with more motivation. In my case, maybe the same, but also maybe this product this package, this pitch to put to a studio for this other project that I'm making. And yeah, so
It's important to have that, to know, yeah, you're working towards when you, like you said, when the floodgates finally open,
mm-hmm.
you have that in your arsenal.
Yeah, and it's important, like you, to keep a fine balance between the day by day versus the long term. And you can make your day by day that training regimen for the long term. There's all sorts of different balances to make both work. Absolutely. If there was one bit of advice, even one word that for our viewers, but generally one point to put out there for them getting through this, what would that be?
I think the biggest thing is, because not that I've struggled with it, but I've thought about it, and I think we've all thought about it, is stay in the game. Don't get too discouraged. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Now say that again. You froze up a little bit. You said
you know,
you froze up a little bit. So go back to
reminding my
huh?
Oh,
okay. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
You said there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's an end to everything, but I think using, like we were just talking before, short term and long term, and keeping yourself grounded, knowing that, this too shall pass. I mean, that is so integral and so important when living life, but also, like we just talked about, trying to find ways to kind of use the time that you have now to, be the best version of yourself, to do what you need to do, to use the time that you normally wouldn't have had to reflect, to be introspective, to figure out what matters to you, what's important to you, how will you come out of this quarantine, if you can, just a better version. But at the same time, and I think this is a really important point to make, Len, not feeling a need, though, to constantly be productive, because I think that is something that we get really caught up with in our society, and I'm guilty of this, is, oh my God, I did nothing today. I waste away the day. I'm not being productive. Like my, kind of like hard to say, well, geez, I'm squandering part of quarantine, and what am I doing with myself? And I think because of our fast-paced culture, we're expected to constantly be on a task, be on a schedule, and like, it makes sense. It keeps us accountable, keeps us responsible, but at the same time, allowing yourself that time to just reflect and to relax and to connect with people and to just sort of be with yourself. And I think that's something that we've never really had the opportunity to do in this capacity ever, is to just truly be with yourself and be comfortable being alone. And I know I've struggled with that, and I've had to come to terms with that, especially during quarantine, is, you have to love your own company to some degree, and fostering that level of, the terminology for it escapes me, but I guess like comfortability, self-love to some degree, and saying, yeah, I'm okay, spending time alone, walking by myself, having my own thoughts. I can still come together with those that I care about, but this is where I am right now. And you know what? It's a good place to be. And yeah, I'm comfortable here.
Yeah, I to touch upon to touch back on, it's okay to have a cheat day, not just being, not just fitness wise and having like big stack of pancakes or a whole pizza to yourself. Well, like mentally and productively, it's okay to have a day off. It's okay to have a cheat day and do nothing. You just escape within yourself and just stare at a wall for hours. I mean, sometimes I found myself just rummaging through TikTok or Instagram at other people's stuff and just not worrying about my projects for maybe a day out of 1 out of 7 days. I'll take a day to just lay in bed with the wife and just cuddle and binge watch something, or just binge watch nothing. Just turn that off and just, just the wind through the trees outside, or the rain against the window. It's okay, but I find myself still not willing to like completely not do anything. I mean, touch upon, bodybuilders, because having been in the military, you're surrounded by pseudo bodybuilders, and there's always a cheat day here, or a rest day, but within your workout regimen, there's always a rest day, but a lot of guys just want to have an active rest day. So instead of running 3 miles, they might just take a mile walk and just chill, just listen to music and just walk. But it's still active. It's an active rest day. Or, so instead of editing, writing, working out, podcast, I might have a day off. But to me, binge watching something on Netflix is homework. That's studying.
Exactly.
That's so still, regardless of what I'm doing, I'm having myself an active rest day or a cheat day, but it's a productive cheat day.
That's really important, and you touch upon a really good point, Glenn. Is it's being active through rest too. You're still finding some level of meaning from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to have that balance. I think that's the biggest thing here is to find that middle ground, and that's something that I've always put as an ideal for myself. And it's easy to kind of get in that pattern where it's all or nothing, right?
Right.
But I think just sort of being able to take a step back and say, maybe I need this day to really kind of recuperate and to sort of think about where I want to be, or like just think about life in general, or whatever it is, or to not think so deeply, or just to kind of allow myself to maybe journal or something, or just sit with my thoughts, sit with my emotions, and maybe process. And I think that's a big thing too, is being able to just say, okay, I have all these projects I need to take care of, or I want to take care of, but I need to allow myself time as well to just sort of do what I need to do for myself, for my own inner peace. And I think that's definitely crucial. Even if that is taking a walk, listening to music, just reflecting, just being with yourself, and just staying.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, Crystal, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Is there any links, any socials, any plugs you want to put on here for yourself, for your brand, or for your social sites, things of that nature?
Yeah, I need to become better with doing that with social media. I find that I'm reluctant, like a reluctant millennial in that way.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, YouTube, I have kind of an interesting sort of handle. It's a Weep, as in WEEP, in indigo, like the color. And you can find me on Instagram with that handle, Facebook as well, and YouTube. So those are my handles and platforms. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed being a part of this podcast too. And I appreciate you having me and taking the time to talk about some of the stuff that's hard hitting and really, really affecting all of us in our day to day. And yeah, just taking a second to reflect on it all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. And you heard it from her. Her links will be in the description below, her socials, her YouTube. And for us here at Zombie SquadCAST, like, share, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, hopefully not a thumbs down. Ring the bell for notifications, and check us out next time.
Awesome. So great being a part of it, Glenn. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.